And joining me now to continue this conversation is Congressman Joe Neguse. He is incoming chair of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee and former House impeachment manager. So, Representative Neguse, thank you so much for being here. Let's start with the fact that you are, of course, you have this new gig. You're going to be one of the lead messenger for House Democrats. So what is the message as we get into 2023 and as Democrats now are in the minority in the House?
Well, good to be with you, and Happy New Year, Yamich. It's great to be with you this morning. Look, the message is fairly simple and clear, which is that House Democrats are focused and united and ready to work for the people, to do what we have done for the better part of the last 2 years, which is to put people over politics and deliver real results for the American people, create better paying jobs, lower costs for working families, build safer communities across our country. And that work is best exemplified or embodied by the legislative achievements that we were able to secure on behalf of the American people under President Biden's leadership over the course of the last 2 years, which you've reported on extensively in the past. The infrastructure bill, of course, the Safer Communities Act, and many other pieces of legislation that will have a tangible impact on American families. So we're excited about the road ahead. I think that focus is one of the reasons why we ultimately outperformed historic expectations and historic norms in the last year's midterm election, and also one of the reasons why I believe that we ultimately will reclaim our majority in 2024, and that the Republican majority here in the 118th Congress will be a temporary one. So we're very focused on delivering for the American people, and it's a very interesting contrast given what one of your reporters just articulated, the chaos that has taken hold in the Republican caucus as we prepare to kick off the 118th Congress on Tuesday.
Well, Congressman, let's talk a little bit about that chaos. We have, of course, Kevin McCarthy still looking for the 218 votes he needs to be Speaker. What do you make of what's going on the other side of the aisle, and how concerned are you about the possible concessions that Kevin McCarthy might make to some of his members in order to become House Speaker?
I'm very concerned, and I think the American people should be very concerned as well. I mean, ultimately, whether Mr. McCarthy is able to somehow muster the sufficient votes necessary to become Speaker is obviously an open question, and we'll find that out here over the course of the next several days. I agree with your reporter that it'll be certainly a fascinating 72 hours. But what is crystal clear is that the Republican Party and the Republican House Conference in the House is simply not ready to govern. And the mere fact that we are speculating as to whether or not they can elect a leader over the course of this next several days at this critical juncture when we should be preparing for the 118th Congress, I think tells you everything that you need to know. The American people should be very concerned about the various concessions that Mr. McCarthy apparently is making in order to attempt to secure the necessary votes to become Speaker to the far right and extreme elements of his caucus, which I certainly don't think is in the best interest of the American people and could very well render the House ungovernable over the course of these next 2 years in terms of some of those concessions that they are making. So again, the juxtaposition of a House Republican caucus that apparently is engulfed in sort of chaos and confusion, juxtaposed against a House Democratic caucus that's very unified behind our new leadership team, the very strong and talented leadership of Hakeem Jeffries, our minority leader from New York, as well as the entire leadership team, very laser focused on delivering results for the American people. I could think of no better contrast, and I think it is instructive in terms of how the next Congress is going to operate.
Well, you talked about the far right part of the Republican Party. I want to put up for folks Marjorie Taylor Greene. She tweeted about her support for Kevin McCarthy. She wrote, in part, our House GOP conference has suffered together so much in the past 2 years, and many Republicans have moved and have changed and moved to the right, but the base doesn't know it yet. With those razor-thin majorities that Republicans are working on, how do you possibly get anything done if Marjorie Taylor Greene and some of the people who are maybe on the farther right end of the Republican Party are the ones calling the shots, essentially?
Yeah, I think that crystallizes the challenge that will face the House Republican caucus, and ultimately what will render it very unlikely that they will be able to ultimately govern, in my view. Look, Republicans spent a lot of time on the campaign trail talking about their work to try to fight inflation, for example, or fight crime. But it appears that they're spending the vast majority of their time right now fighting each other. And the fact, again, that they cannot elect a leader, the fact that they have not been able to begin the organizing process on their end, which is a very important part of the beginning of every new session of Congress in terms of committees being structured, committee chairs being elected, so on and so forth. House Democrats are ready to go. We are ready to deliver results for the American people. We're ready to begin the work. We will do what we can to find opportunities, to find common ground, to address the consequential challenges that face our country, to forge consensus. But ultimately, it's a question for the Republicans in the House as to whether or not they are going to be prepared to govern. And by all accounts, it appears that they will not be.
And one last quick question, which is George Santos. What do you make of Republican silence on this issue, and also the responsibility, if at all, that you see Democrats have in the fact that he was able to get elected? I know there's a lot of blame to go along, including reporters, frankly, but I wonder what you make of the Republicans and the Democrats' part in this.
Yeah, I don't know that I would speak to the efficacy of the DCCC's work in terms of research and the like. I'm far more concerned about the silence that's coming from Republican House leadership with respect to the scandal that has engulfed Mr. Santos, and the fact that none of the Republican leaders, at least from anything that I've come across thus far, have said a word about Mr. Santos, notwithstanding the lies and the misrepresentations and so forth that have now come into full public view. I think is deeply disappointing. It's emblematic, again, of the approach that it appears Mr. McCarthy intends to take as the leader of his conference in the House. I certainly think that Mr. Santos's constituents and the people of New York deserve better, but the American people also deserve a government that is going to be responsive and ethical. And it's very clear that that is not in the cards with respect to the new House Republican majority.
Well, we'll certainly keep watching George Santos, who will, of course, be your colleague in the House. So thank you so much, Representative Joe Neguse.
Thank you.